I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's block that we call Jaws Mockbusters. In the summer of 1975, a film that had experienced a troubled production, going well over budget and past schedule, was released across over 450 screens and became the highest-grossing film of all time. That film was Jaws, the prototype for the summer blockbuster. The film absolutely crushed it at the box office and went on to win awards for music and editing, making it a truly historical moment in motion picture history. Following in Jaws' wake were several films that looked to cash in on the great white success of Spielberg's classic. A slew of films about dangerous animals terrorizing humans began to surface that all seemed to exploit what made Jaws great, and the mockbuster was born. A fisherman named Captain Nolan becomes the target of a killer whale after Nolan kills its mate in one of the most gruesome opening scenes I have ever witnessed. The tone is set immediately as the Orca, like an underwater Jason Voorhees, systematically maims or kills everyone that comes in contact with Captain Nolan. A haunting score by Ennio Morricone and an equally haunting performance by Richard Harris punctuate the 1977 film Orca. After a couple take a nice, relaxing dip into what looks like a sewage processing plant pool, the two end up as fish food, literally fish food, victims of Operation Razor Teeth, a defunct Vietnam War project tasked with engineering basically unstoppable Piranha. Produced by Roger Corman, directed by Joe Dante, is the incredible Piranha from 1978. Please, if you ever think of buying someone a baby alligator, do not flush it down the toilet. Especially if the sewers in your town are a receptacle for a shady pharma company's bio-waste. This is the main lesson learned in the opening moments of this film, as 12 years later, little Ramon, the pet alligator, has now become a 36-foot monster. And man, does that thing look big on screen. Just wait till you see it. Robert Forster is incredible as the lead in 1980's Alligator. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy.
Can you give us a cause of death in each case?
The bodies were dismembered. We're waiting on the coroner's report.
Can you tell us at least if they were similar?
The bodies were dismembered.
There's only one creature in the world that could do that. A killer whale. The ancient Romans called him Orca Orcinus, Latin for the bringer of death.
Uh-huh. Well, look, I really appreciate the warning. I'll brief my staff. We'll take care of it. Yeah. Good night. Good night. Schmuck.
All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster. With me, as always, is Jeremy Floyd. How are you today on this beautiful Sunday?
It is a beautiful Sunday, actually. Yeah,
it's really nice.
Yeah, doing all right.
Fantastic. As per usual, we have a very excellent show. It's a very special show because they all are. And we also have another special guest with us today, a repeat special guest today, Michael Floyd. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, I think you're our returning champion. You are the number one returning guest.
This is your third show?
Yeah.
Third show, yes.
That's excellent. Michael was nice enough to help us out with 2 of the 3 zombie evolution shows where we got to talk about such amazing films as Zombie 2, Day of the Dead, the list goes on. Today, we are talking about, as Jeremy calls them, Mockbusters. I love the name Mockbusters, by the way, and specifically Mockbusters of Jaws. Can you explain what a mockbuster is real quick?
Yeah, well, I mean, in some contexts, they're like just trying to make a movie that's like a fake Transformers or something when Transformers is coming out, or a fake Avengers when Avengers comes out, or a fake Aladdin or something.
This is specifically the asylum you're referring to.
Sure, and they have kind of like come to sort of own the term mockbuster, but it's also just sort of any movie that is trying to trade off the SEO of another film. And, in this case, the movie, movie of the sort of mid '70s was Jaws, or at least it held that title for 2 years before Star Wars
I
took
think
it over.
Jaws really defined the modern blockbuster. So I feel like these are very appropriate, very early mockbusters. I'm sure there were other movies that would try to kind of get a little bit of the wave of another movie, but these were very overt takeovers on the
That's a
concept.
good way of putting it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in this case, it's all these movies are like, okay, let's find out another way to make a Jaws. We don't have access to that IP, but we've got some other sort of deadly sea creature terrorizing people. How do we turn that into a movie? And what we got was the movies we're going to watch today.
Yeah, so we're watching Orca. We're talking about Orca. We're talking about Piranha. And we're talking about Alligator. So that's 1977, 1978, and 1980 for each of these films. And this was very interesting that we stuck with the aquatic here. We've got two fish movies,
right.
One being a mammal, of course, that's aquatic. And then we've got an alligator who hangs out in either
who can do both.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Either a child's aquarium or in the sewers. They all felt like Jaws to me. The way that they were parsed out in terms of all the beats and all that. Again, I mean, I know we kind of repeat that a lot on the show, but I think that's why we put these films together. Orca went so far as to kill a great white with the killer of the movie at the very first
I
scene
did
of
like
the movie.
that opening. Right. That was a nice fuck you to
talk about overt
to Jaws. Yeah. This is no big deal. Yeah.
Just in case you thought this was going to be the thing.
Well, it's funny because it's like that sort of I don't know what running gag that Wes Craven and Sam Raimi had of like.
Right,
putting
you thought this
the
was
Rivals poster in the background to tell you that like, hey, this isn't real horror. This is real horror.
Right,
like,
and it is
Jaws
it
wasn't
is,
real horror.
It is specifically Jaws, although it's not a Jaws poster. It's a big picture of a shark in Hills Have Eyes.
You thought you could call your boat the Orca? No. The Orca is
right. The Orca is the Orca.
Here.
Wow, I didn't even put that together.
And in this case, the Bumpo is the Orca.
Yeah,
didn't quite have the same ring.
So in Jaws. The orca takes out the great white, and in Orca, the orca takes out a great white, actually.
Perfect metaphor.
By hitting it as fast as it can, and like ramming it as fast as it can, and blasting it out of the water. Like, it was a really violent death for this shark. That shark had no chance.
Straight into the gills or whatever, And then that thing when it flew into the air.
Brutal.
But yeah, I mean, I think just in terms of these movies, just sort of specifically. The exciting part is, they're all kind of, water-based, as you were talking about earlier. I mean, there were other Jaws mockbusters out there. I think also these are some of the more interesting ones. Grizzly we could have done as well. There's
Manitou.
Yeah.
Prophecy.
Devilfish, I think, was one of them too.
They're like this environmental. Movies about environmental dangers and things like that seem to be popping up too around this time.
Right.
Which I feel like Alligator might have been the first very overt, political satire on that.
Right.
Well, I guess Piranha technically, because
Piranha was right on the nose of the military getting involved and then releasing this. What I'm assuming is a weapon, right? I mean, like,
right.
They're trying to weaponize these.
Operation Razor Teeth.
Exactly.
That movie was awesome. So this was the first time I saw any of these movies, although I was telling Jeremy before that Orca used to be on TV all the time when I was growing up. And I would always catch it right at the end when Richard Harris is getting the shit kicked out of him by the orca. And that's all I knew in terms of context of the movie. And I mean, I must have been 5 or 6 watching this. So watching this and knowing the full breadth of the movie, it was not terrible. I honestly have heard some like really terrible reviews of this, and they're just like, what the hell is this? It's a complete ripoff. But it's actually a pretty beautiful film in a lot of instances and like some really great production.
Well, real quick, that was kind of the part of the reason of like wanting to do these movies in particular is that like marketing spin on them, and definitely elements in them are there to kind of prey off of the popularity of Jaws. But they themselves are also, sort of earnest attempts at making movies. It's not just, schlock with a title that, has a poster that looks similar to the blockbuster, right?
I'm sure Joe Dante would probably disagree with you, but I mean,
that he meant that to be totally schlocky. I mean,
well, I don't know if he meant it. No, I mean, I think they made the movie legitimately, but I think it was just unabashed, in their attempt, because the original poster of Piranha, it's a gigantic piranha. Yeah. That's swimming a totally misleading, typical exploitation poster.
for sure, but what I mean is that the movie itself is still a movie and not just clickbait to get you to watch it, and then it turns out it's just
not
garbage.
One of those Netflix movies named Transbotters or Trans.
Right. It's not Piranha 2: The Spawning.
But that was a James Cameron movie, right?
Mostly, and then he walked off of it because he just hated it. So,
or perhaps was fired, depending on whose story you believe.
Yeah.
So let's start with Orca, and we mentioned that Richard Harris is in this, who goes on to be Dumbledore, and what the hell's his name in Gladiator?
Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius. How could I forget that?
Oh, you know Marcus Aurelius?
I did not say I knew him. I said he touched me on the shoulder once.
I guess this movie was a big success when it came out, so it definitely did what it was supposed to do in cashing in on the people's drive to see another aquatic giant mammal attacking people. And in this one, there's
just when you thought it was safe to go in the water.
But in this one,
there's another thing to be afraid of.
The aquatic monster in this one has a motivation, and it's set up pretty graphically in that first scene. We were just talking about the Great
whole
White.
movie is very upsetting, but to go from a very silly Jaws 3D opening of the whales dancing in the water.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, Jaws 3D, crazy.
One of probably the most upsetting, just depressing and just awful scenes in any movie I've ever seen.
Right. So
of not only murdering a mother and having her have a miscarriage at the same time, and you're just like, God damn.
And just hosing the baby off the bridge of the boat. It was just awful.
Well, and also that, the Ennio Morricone, main theme that was playing, that the tragic main theme, the huge emotional main theme, also helped sell that just awful moment. And let's give Richard Harris credit too. It's it's dear God or whatever he says.
Yeah.
Not to mention that just before that, the scene was them in a classroom explaining that the fetus of a killer whale looks like a human, and it actually has fingers. And then all of a sudden, we see this in the next scene, the real thing pop out, and it was, I don't know, it hit kind of close to home.
Yeah.
Well, instead of that, triumph you feel when Quint is shooting harpoons into the shark.
That's not here.
You're like, oh, that was easy. He got him real quick, and it's like, oh my God, it's horrifying. I mean, it's it takes this huge turn from what it was in Jaws.
Well, no, it's interesting because it's sort of, they try to set up so much that this is the most deadly mammal in all of the animal kingdom, blah blah blah, and then this horrific thing happens to one of its species. And your loyalty, I guess, immediately goes back to the whale, going, well, yeah. Fuck that guy. He totally just ruined this guy's life. The humans are automatically the enemy, or at least Richard is, and
I thought
you kind of feel justified in every murder that the whale commits, because you're like, yeah, this dude's on a revenge quest. This is Death Wish with a fish.
Sorry, Bo Derek. Yeah.
This is one of those situations where I was again rooting for the slasher in this, kind of like Jason Part 8. I wanted him to fuck up everybody that was in the movie in clever new ways, and they did that really well with this film. I mean, it was an orca, which you'd think that, he would either just ram a boat and sink you or eat you. But in this one, this killer whale blows up and burns an entire fishing village, destroys an entire lot of boats in very cool ways, and then also it kind of, it has like a human nature to beckon people to follow it. Like it was like, come on with me, doing that like flipper thing at the side.
Yeah,
he's like, he wants me to follow it. We're going to follow it.
I can't do a middle finger, but I can do this.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm no longer a fetus. I don't have individual fingers, you know?
Right. I mean, it's funny because I feel like probably one of the more fucked up things in the movie when he's attacking the house on the side of the island or whatever, and he snaps off Bo Derek's leg, and you're just like, Jesus fuck! It's just like it's like you feel like he knew what he was doing. He wasn't trying to kill her. He just wanted to mutilate her, you know, as another humiliation thing to like get them more pissed off.
I like that they showed, you know, that the whale did know what it was doing. It was strategizing, and there were cool ways that they were showing that, mostly due through the eye or through that, you know, close up of the eye of the whale, and that was him looking back at Richard Harris in those instances and doing whale vision or whatever they were trying to do, killer whale vision. But
well, the eye thing was actually really cool. It was like,
I agree.
They made a big deal out of it, of like, okay, the whale sees him and like then, you know, it imprints that this is my enemy.
The Terminator.
Yeah. Now here's a question. What I think I missed it. What exactly was Richard Harris's motivation to capture this whale?
Pay off his mortgage. To pay off the mortgage of his boat. That
right,
was his main
but I mean, it's like why would capturing a whale be such a treasure? I mean,
because the original goal was to kill the great white. That was his original hunting trip that he was on that we see. And all of a sudden, this even bigger prize comes along, and he says that it's like per pound or per square foot or something like that. He's got it measured out really strange. He would get like some large bounty for this animal, bringing it in as captured. And so he was like, I'm going to pay off my boat.
Right. I guess it's not defined who would give him the bounty, which I guess is your question, Michael. But
yeah, I mean,
I see. Who he's working for?
I mean, because Vanessa Redgrave or Charlotte, who is it? Is it Charlotte? Who is it? Charlotte or Vanessa? Who's the woman?
Charlotte Rampling?
Charlotte. Yeah, I get the two names confused. Anyway, she mentions, you know, stuff about them being raised in captivity and everything, and it's like, why would you want a wild one? I don't understand what would be the benefit of that. Like, she describes what a horrible creature it can be if provoked, and then he just goes on to go, yeah, well, I'm going to capture a wild one. For what? We have no idea why. You know.
Well, wasn't he forced into that though? Because they were on a mission to find the great white.
Yeah,
and then it got crossed.
Yeah, I feel like that part was just too nebulous to me. I was just like,
what I thought was pretty nebulous is where they ended up at the end of this movie. So there's, you know, the big chase, kind of the revenge chase. So, you know, Captain Nolan, who is, you know, Richard Harris's character, kills this female whale with baby. The male sees all this, then plots revenge. And then there's this cat and mouse, killer whale and fisherman kind of back and forth thing. And then finally, the whale brings Richard Harris out to the ocean, basically on his own turf, and brings him to north, I'm assuming, because all of a sudden they're surrounded by glaciers and frozen.
It's really not clear where they start out at, is it? I mean, because
how long were they in the boat?
I know, because it seems like they're in this harbor, and then all of a sudden, 20 minutes later, they're in the North Pole or the Arctic or whatever, and you're just like, what's his face? The guy from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I can't remember his name. Chief. It's just like, oh yeah. Have you ever seen Arctic ice? It's a joke what it'll do to this boat. It'll tear it to shreds.
And then Louis Skolnick was on there too, which makes me feel safe. Being on a boat with Louis Skolnick from
Will
Revenge
Sampson
of the Nerds.
is the name.
Yeah. He's literally I think he's in it for like 2 shots.
Yeah, and he gets killed in a really weird way.
And everyone's like,
no,
really Tim, and you're like,
yeah, that was it. They just had to get rid of him because he didn't show up later.
Well, so that's what like I found like the most interesting part of the film is like that. What you're describing is like that sort of very end of the third act where it's like, okay, they sail to the thing in Antarctica and everything's just like covered in ice, but everything sort of leading up to that was really compelling. It was interesting. It was like there's the sort of really horrifying capture scene of the whale and like the murder of the whale, and then the cat and mouse that you're describing. The way in which male orca, the mate of the one who was murdered, how he goes around, terrorizing the fishermen in the village and like, ruining this whole thing. All the pressure of the town itself is like being put on the shoulders of Captain Nolan, the Richard Harris character. He's sort of getting it from all angles, and like I feel like that part of the film that they did pretty well, like where you felt like, okay, he's gonna want to do this thing, even just in spite of like the incredibly sensationalist thing where the orca like smashed that house to death and like bit off Bo or Derek's leg, and like even though that was like pretty crazy, like the way that they built up to that was really interesting.
Yeah,
I think where it starts to it starts to lose the audience, I think, is that third act where it's like, okay, first of all, Nolan just was like, okay, I'm gonna go one-on-one with this guy. Okay, well, what do you need this crew for? Why do you need to kill everybody on the boat to do that? Like,
right,
because everyone that's associated with this dies now.
Right, and then he goes off and does this thing. The orca kills them one by one. It's like a slasher movie, and then it gets to Nolan. It's like, oh, there's gonna be an epic battle, and then he just kind of sinks to the bottom. And you're like, okay, that was weird.
Because he keeps going on about it being a fair fight or something, and it's just like, what are you talking about? You've got a fucking boat and harpoon guns.
40-ton whale versus a man.
You a 52-year-old alcoholic is gonna fight a killer whale? I mean, are you out of your mind? What are you talking about?
This is a bar fight, okay?
Yeah.
Look, he's Irish. He's just
got the fighting on the brain,
Oh god.
Like, what was the thing Alec Baldwin said in 30 Rock? He was just like, all I need are my two friends, St. Michael and St. Peter. Putting up his dukes and like.
You call those fist names?
Right. It's just absurd, and you're like, why did you have to drag all these people along to die with you? I don't
right,
get
exactly.
It.
Like,
you just want to pay off the mortgage on your boat. Like, fuck, take out a rowing boat and go kill this thing.
He wanted to pay the mortgage on his boat. He recognized the cosmic injustice that he wrought by, killing this orca's mate, and decides to sacrifice himself to like, do the sort of like one-on-one, mano-a-mano, self-sacrifice. But yeah, why is he taking everyone with him?
I know he seems very mournful and regrets, and it's like, totally, I really didn't mean to kill her. It was a total accident.
And you buy his performance there, where it's like you buy his character's motivations on all that.
Right. He has incredible remorse about the whole thing. And yet he's approaching the whole thing like an idiot at the same time.
Right, like, why not just him and the bumbo, the boat he'll never be able to pay off,
right?
And, him going one-on-one with this orca. Everyone else didn't need to die for
right.
him to, like, complete this vengeance. And if he did, well, then the Vision Village can go back to normal. He sacrificed himself, and yay. Or, maybe he gets there and, overpowers the orca, and from hell's heart I stabbeth thee, and like, it ends it that way. But instead it was kind of like neither. They found the middle of neither.
Right.
It's crazy.
I mean, maybe there's some horrible metaphor about failing to pay off your mortgage and literally going
with you,
going down, taking everyone down plus your house with you.
Totally. Maybe that was more.
That was more the satire that we were missing.
Right.
I don't know.
We were the ones being too literal. Exactly.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of moments in this movie felt very similar to Jaws. I mean, like we were saying, like this. Although we started on the boat and we kind of end on the same boat, we're not like introduced to a boat halfway through, like the Orca.
Right.
In this one, we're kind of with that boat from the beginning.
Well, and then just like a very direct thing of like, when we are first starting the movie, and it's like, okay, we see the orcas, we're swimming with them, and then we see the great white, and the music does a fake dun dun dun. It does the sound-alike score.
Right.
All of these movies did that. Yeah.
Exactly, and like, so it's a very direct reference, and then like we were saying earlier, like the orca just takes out the great white, like no big deal.
Right. And going back to the zombie too there. I couldn't quite tell if that person, the scuba diver in the very beginning, was actually in the water with that shark. it kind of looked like it. I mean, if it was composited together, I thought it was really well done, especially for 1970, whatever.
No, I feel like that one, they were in the same area or something more controlled. I don't think that they were in the middle of the ocean or something. But,
right.
Who the hell knows?
Right.
But I did want to talk about some of the compositing effects of this movie, because we are treated to them right off the bat with these strange, it's almost like they changed the opacity to about 65% on one video, placed it on top of another video of the orca jumping out of like just probably a zoo or an aquarium's dolphin show.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of filmed that and then put that on top. And the one that really got to me was, well, they had two of them at one time, over this like sunset that was, very artsy. But after the orca takes out the entire fishing village, in that big blaze of fire, it kind of does these flips out of the water in that same effect as if it's like celebrating, like, ha-ha, I got you guys.
Right.
And it was just a really odd moment. I found myself laughing out loud at more parts of this than I probably should have. Like, I was literally laughing, especially when Nolan gets it at the end and he is just taken out by a flipper. One big flipper just takes him the fuck out of the water and knocks him up against a glacier. An iceberg.
I thought that was a particularly good way of doing it, rather than eating him. He just gives him a final "fuck you" flick. Like you're literally a booger.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good way.
You caused all this shit, and I'm gonna take you out like a booger.
And he was kind of a booger in that. Like, I don't think he was a very nice person, to be honest. And
he wasn't.
I wasn't rooting for Nolan at
but
the
hold
least.
on. Like, it's more like he was a desperate person,
right?
And he's trying to get this this mortgage on his boat figured out, and then he feels terrible about it the whole time. Like he goes like to talk to the priest, and he's like, "Oh, can you commit a sin against an animal?" And he's like, "Yeah, I guess so. You can commit a sin against a blade of grass. A sin is really something you commit against yourself." Right. And it's like he says that, he absorbs that, and he actually feels all that, and you see it on his face, especially when he's like, he determines for himself that he's going to go out and kill himself to like save this fishing village, because you see him on the the sort of, I don't know what that's called, the gangplank at the very tip of the boat. And he's wearing his full Jedi robes or whatever,
right.
and it's the music swelling, and you can see that he's ready to die, and to atone for all this. And you see the whole village out there congregating to send him off, and hey, fuck you, can't believe you ruined my village. He's this total pariah. But you see that sort of that pain and that sacrifice on his face, and it was like, I was like, oh man, this movie is kind of working for me, and then it kind of slips off the rails and kind of sputters out at the very end there, but that everything sort of building up to that really made all that work.
Right, and he does have the whole story about his pregnant wife being killed by a drunk driver. And he's like, I'm that drunk driver now.
That's the thing, is that they always talk about in order to create a motif for something that's going to stick with you, you should probably do it 3 times. That's a good rule of thumb. In this one, we see a quick flashback of the car going off the road, and then him saying that, yeah, there was an issue with my pregnant wife. She died in a car crash, and that's all we get from that. So I guess that they were just trying to cut in some sort of relationship that he would have to the whale, and some sort of commonality with his enemy, who in my instant, he was the enemy. He was definitely the enemy in this whole thing, especially after that first scene. I fuck that guy.
And I guess it just shows how traumatized he was as a person,
right?
And how that kind of fed into the way he was living his life.
But still, he acted as if he was super cold, and he was just doing it for the paycheck. He still acted like a cold-blooded mammal killer or shark killer.
Because he didn't. It's not like he tried to capture it gently. He shot a harpoon into it.
Sure.
Yeah.
All that stuff is true, but you're talking about Nolan in the first act. Okay? Yeah. He's cold-blooded. He doesn't give a shit about this stuff. He then sees this thing. He's like mother of God. He then relates it to his own wife and his own circumstances. He then, is is torn up, going to the priest, is this a sin? It's like you can read all that on his face, and and he's like, okay, I'm going to give up. I'm not going to go back to do the fish thing again. When he's talking to Charlotte Rampling, she's asking him, are you going to give up? Are you going to give up? And he says, yes, I'm going to give up. And then, the whale keeps attacking him and keeps terrorizing the village, and he decides, hey, I'm not going to just like, pack up my shit and walk away from this place, like fuck this fishing village. He's going to go fight the whale and kill himself to sacrifice himself. So it's like, he goes from, being this horrible person and selfish and like, desperate in a lot of ways. And so it's kind of sad in that sense too. But like, and his desperation pushed him to be this horrible, horrible person. And then he has this arc to, being more like selfless and everything else. And taking, absorbing, empathizing, and like absorbing the pain of this creature. And eventually sort of, making that decision that like pushes him to self-sacrifice. And I think all that like worked really, really well. But, because the ending was so anticlimactic, it didn't quite, resonate the same way it should have.
According to this trivia, Richard Harris, who was only 46 during this, he wasn't a 50-year-old drunk. He was a 46-year-old drunk during this. He performed his own stunts and was nearly killed on several occasions. So maybe the anticlimactic ending was him being like, listen, just have him flip me off with its fucking flipper. I don't want to do the whole rigmarole of some crazy death scene.
Right, I'm going to fucking drown if you put me in the water, so just...
I cannot float anymore.
I can slump really well. That is no problem.
Well, it's also funny because like, this movie is, obviously more low budget than Jaws, and you could certainly see that in certain instances you're talking about, Brian, where it's like, okay, you can see the sort of composite, or you can see that it's a model that's being knocked down in the fishing village or something. But I felt like they did a lot with what they had. I think if they had stuck the landing a little better, the movie would have been sort of better remembered. Than it being, essentially what it is now, just totally forgotten. I mean, it was played on TV at one point, but I don't think you can find that anymore.
Yeah, because right before this, Dino De Laurentiis had produced a remake of King Kong, which I think that was 76. So I think that was the year after Jaws. Mm-hmm. So I think that was technically his first attempt at kind of capitalizing on the popularity of that, and that was a huge success. The whole King Kong at on the Universal Tram tour is based on that version of King Kong. It's not the 30s one,
right?
But anyway, I think he knew what he was doing better,
right?
On Orca.
There were giant animals that needed to be on screen, and he was like, let's get another one. This was a book originally, right? I believe this is a novel.
Was it? I don't know. That's a good question.
It says that there's a source novel associated with it. So, and it said that the source novel came out the same year as the film, so they probably just saw, who's writing fish books? Get on this one. Who's the next Peter Benchley?
Yeah, exactly. Give me the closest thing that I can legally produce without getting sued.
Right.
Well, it's not a fish book, but it is an aquatic mammal. Is that
perfect?
okay?
Perfect.
Sign it.
Let's do it.
Green lit.
Well, because you know what was interesting, like in the, again, I think part of it is that Morricone music, and obviously Richard Harris, ends up selling a lot of this. Himself, but that sort of regret of decisions made, and those kinds of themes. Michael Anderson, the director of this movie, tackled a little bit in Dam Busters as well. Like when right after they get back from the bombing run and they see the empty table, and you have Michael Redgrave sort of just with a look at kind of selling the impact of what was happening and what he did, and those actions. I think the movie was presented a lot more dramatically, and it was supposed to be more of kind of a drama than just a sort of straight thriller, the way that, or I guess kind of a horror movie, I guess is what Jaws is. Mm-hmm. But Jaws is supposed to be fun, and this is definitely not supposed to be in that fun zone,
right?
And and I think that the direction just really helped sell some of those moments that like were hard, or that you would imagine would be a lot harder to do in a movie like this, where it's supposed to be thrills and spills.
Right. I think you touched on a good point there. I think that's part of the reason why Orca was not as successful, or certainly kind of more maligned than Jaws was. And that is because it is much more of a straight drama, like we said, that it goes from this very kind of silly opening to like this horrendous thing, and that just like derails the tone of the whole thing. I mean, not in a, it doesn't derail the movie. It just sets this very dark, somber tone.
Sure. it doesn't allow you to have the fun you have, in Jaws.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the fun of Jaws, cuts the fun of Jaws into this awful scene, and it's like, okay, this is gonna be kind of a bummer.
Yeah, goes into Christopher Nolan Batman territory where it's like it's this very over the top thing that's taken very seriously, and it's just very dark, and you're just like, oh boy.
Well, it's funny because okay, that's just maybe the marketing of it, but the movie earned all that stuff. It's just that the very ending, it just didn't quite get it to work.
Well,
and it didn't have that satisfaction at the end there that then allowed you to kind of feel the thing as a whole being satisfying and as a kind of a drama like that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm just thinking in terms of longevity and its place in film history. Why it never got the love and following that Jaws has. Although I speaking of marketing, I will say probably my favorite part of this movie is the poster for it. It's a great poster. Dino was very good at finding whoever did the poster for that in King Kong, with Kong on the World Trade Center. Straddling the buildings. It's great.
So just making sure I'm looking at the right poster right now. It's a giant whale with a guy on top of it with a harpoon, and then the entire fishing village underneath, and he's basically splitting the boat in half.
Crashing through it. It's fairly misleading, awesome. But it looks wonderful.
Oh, that would be a great scene in the movie.
Right, the whale's like smashing through a boat, and then the Richard Harris character is doing the Moby Dick.
It's Moby Dick, right.
Melville doing Moby Dick, Hell's Heart.
Gregory Peck screaming Melville as he's.
No, that was from Hell's Heart I stabbeth thee, Melville.
It's just like
that's Jeff Green in Curb, and he's like, "Oh, it's Moby Dick. His dick is moping."
He's up there moping, man. Moby Dick. That's what he is.
Moby Dick.
Who fucking Moby Dick?
Moby Dick's the book by Melville. Where are you getting Moby Dick from?
Moby Dick, man. His dick is moping.
Oh, literally Moby Dick.
Yeah.
Moby Dick. Wow. It is very odd to note that Keenan Wynn is in Orca and then subsequently in Piranha, which is chronologically next.
Which movie did Keenan Wynn get it the worst in? Orca or Piranha? Panel thoughts?
I would say Orca, being dragged down to your watery grave. And you never see what he does with the people that he drags underwater. That's kind of you just see this bubble of blood come up, and you're just like, oh boy.
Or is it worse to get chewed up trying to drag yourself back to the house, and then you die from blood loss?
So I'm gonna have to go with I'm gonna have to go with the Piranha death on this one.
Would you rather?
Yeah. Boy.
Which Keenan Wynn?
Let's move on to Piranha. So Joe Dante's Piranha, which is in many ways a bit of a departure from Orca, especially in terms of the fact that this actually has a sense of humor. There's moments of levity during all of the horror, and it's also got some really great scenes of horror and gore. This obviously is Joe Dante coming out of the gates and being like, I can make a movie and I can touch on all these things. And especially with such a limited budget, they pulled it off. And I think that they pulled off some really great things in this movie. And this is the first time I've ever seen it. And I've also heard ho-hum things about this movie, that it's, kind of cheesy, kind of schlocky, and although it's still a really fantastic movie, and it was really awesome watching this one. This is one that I think I could watch over and over again.
Yeah, I remember discovering this on DVD arbitrarily. I had no idea that it even existed, and Jaws and Gremlins were two of my favorite movies growing up, so I was like, holy shit, I have to see this. And I had just discovered Invasion of the Body Snatchers, so I was
Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, extra delighted to find that Kevin had a fairly large role in it.
He is something else. When I saw his name pop up in the credits, I was like, okay, we're gonna get a wacky character that's gonna just kind of be in there for a second, have a really pivotal role, and then be out of there. And that's exactly what we got with this one. It was and he was like,
and he's
such
fucking awesome in it.
He is awesome in it.
He's kind of a doomed character from the start, but he sees it through. So,
So this one is a little different than Orca in that we don't have just one aquatic animal that's attacking. We have legions of aquatic animals that are attacking. And in this one, it is piranhas.
Brian, please. They're called a school.
A school of piranha that are attacking, that are also genetically modified in order to survive in different temperatures of water and different types of water, salt or fresh water. I believe they're usually freshwater. Is that what they were saying in the movie? But this particular brand could get out into the ocean and really fuck some shit up if they are let out, and they are let out. And that is the whole start of this this movie, and all the craziness is this. Well, actually, it starts because a pair of teenagers get eaten inside this pool that they find out of nowhere. This pool being in a restricted area. That, of course, they go into the restricted area. The water feels great.
I love these guys. They're hiking. They're
I would not jump in that fucking pool.
I know, God.
It looked like a sewer. It looked like it was like toxic waste.
And the guy even says that. He's like,
I know.
This looks like a water reclamation. What the hell would you swim in this for?
You're going to go right in there?
Yeah. Oh, a body of water. Let's go in.
But also that girl just pushed him in. He wasn't even fully disrobed yet or derobed.
Yeah.
Hey.
And he's like, "What up?" And then she accidentally takes off all her clothes at one point. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but then everything kind of, and we were just like, "Hey guys," clearly they just left that one in there and said that was a good take.
Yeah.
But yeah, those two people get screwed up pretty well. And then they show a lot of the aftermath of the gore from some of these, and it's some of my favorite gore I've ever seen in a movie. Like they did it right. People's feet are eaten off. Kids are like severely bitten up, and faces are completely torn to shreds. And I was like, this is pretty damn good.
Well, I'm assuming you looked up who did the special effects on this one, right?
It is, in fact, Rob Bottin.
That makes sense.
Working with Phil Tippett. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes total sense then. Yeah.
There's a little stop motion piranha creature guy that literally shows up for 2 shots.
Can we bring that up real quick?
It drives me nuts, yeah.
So Piranha takes a turn more into science fiction than Orca, because this is, this is a military exercise that is training or breeding these piranha to survive in different situations, most likely to weaponize it, right? I mean, that's obviously the ultimate, conclusion of these is that it's going to be a weapon. But there is, when they go into this lab, there is a strange piranha-like monster that is in this lab.
There are 2 of them.
Yes.
One of them is in a tank, and that's obviously more like a hand puppet kind of thing. And then one is a stop motion creature.
I'm just wondering what the hell that thing was, and because it never comes back.
So this is what drives me nuts, because it reminded me of the Bride of Frankenstein. In the very beginning of Bride of Frankenstein, Dr. Pretorius comes and he brings this case. And he shows Henry Frankenstein, and they're all vials of little people. Like he's somehow magically created little fully formed adults that are fully dressed and everything.
2 inches high.
It's like obviously kind of a joke, but it's like, oh, keep the king away from the queen, and you're just like, what? It's so. You're in it, and then all of a sudden there's this complete departure, and you're just like, what the fuck were those things? It's just like,
I mean,
they're in one scene.
Yeah.
They're never talked about again.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay.
Well, part of it was to give you this sense that there's a lot of stuff going on there. Like this lab,
right.
They didn't have the budget to show it, but this lab was basically a smaller version of the lab in Gremlins 2. Right?
Okay.
Splice-O life type of thing.
Nice connection.
Where they've got all kinds of crazy shit going on, and you just get these little hints at this stuff.
Right.
In this one, Kevin McCarthy basically took over the job of Christopher Lee in this one as the owner of this laboratory.
Right.
And he was kind of a mad scientist too, but again, he had a really cool role. He didn't make it through the whole movie, but he was a hero at one point, and he kind of sacrificed himself, and he was an awesome character. This movie, I think, did a better job of introducing everybody and giving them a moment of heroism, or at least their time in the spotlight.
Yeah, I thought even very small parts were pretty well defined.
And they didn't give a shit about killing kids in this one either. Like these,
Right.
we're watching a lot of movies lately where, they talk about don't kill kids on screen. These movies are killing kids.
Okay, here I listened to the commentary on Alligator last night when I watched it, and that's actually an
brutal.
interesting point that they made in the commentary was just that that's something that's very rare these days. It's really very frowned upon to kill children in movies, and both Piranha and Alligator do it, and Alligator does it in a pretty hilarious, terrible way because it's two brothers playing in their backyard swimming pool, and like they're playing pirates, and makes one walk the plank, and he's like, no, don't push me in because there's something under there, and he immediately falls into the thing and blood shoots up, and you're just like, wow.
That's something I wanted to bring up, and I'll stick with Piranha, but I'm also going to bring it up with Alligator, is that if you're gonna play a movie where fish or something under the water are attacking people, the low budget approach is to create a bunch of bubbles underneath people. And then all of a sudden, like when people start screaming and you call action or something like that, release a bunch of blood into the water underneath. You don't need to know what the hell's happening underneath that water, but that's the effect.
Perfect.
Is having, is that blood. And it happens so much in Piranha. It's like, something's happening because you just see it's like a hot tub starting, and then the blood pops out, and it's like, oh, they're there. They're gonna come out. Someone's gonna get it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought Piranha did a really good job of actually showing what was causing the magic bubble piranhas, like because they're biting and they're moving so fast, like
making strange noises.
Probably would be.
They
and you can making impossible noises underwater.
You could really see that Dante was like an editor, right? Like there's like no wasted beats in that movie. There's no like drowned out or drawn out scenes. Like everything is really quick. And even on the jokes, he's cutting into the next scene. Like somebody will say something stupid, like the one girl, for instance, was like, are we gonna?
Right. I've been hinting my way under the covers.
Hinting
for 20
my way
minutes
into
or
the
something.
covers, yeah.
and Bradford Dillman's just too drunk to realize it, and you're just like, bro.
And then they cut right out of that joke.
You are really something.
But ultimately, this group or this school of deadly piranha are released from this laboratory enclosure into the river that leads right into this summer camp, which again is a better summer camp than the Camp Crystal Lake kids, obviously. But yeah,
these are actual children and not
they actually
middle-aged teenagers.
And then these piranha basically shoot through this river and terrorize this camp, leading to a bigger problem if this starts leading out into the ocean and all the other veins and arteries across the world. And these things are absolutely madness. Now, I've never seen Piranha 2, but I can see that this definitely would take it into a very different direction, or could take it into a very different direction, especially since they established the mutations in the first movie. And I'm hoping that I know it touches on that because I've read some of the synopses, but I haven't seen that movie. But after watching this, I would like to see the sequel.
I own it, but I've never brought myself to watch it. I'm just so... I know, because I really like the original, and I'm just terrified of how terrible it's going to be. I'd kind of rather fantasize about it, I guess is what I'm saying. Anyway.
This movie reminds me of how much of a good director Dante is. Between this, The Howling, Gremlins 2, Matinee, like
The Burbs.
The Burbs.
I was going to say, I like Piranha a hell of a lot more than I like The Howling.
I think this movie's fantastic. Yeah, I agree.
I've never been a huge fan of The Howling. I mean, just to have a quick tangent or divergent, but because I feel like everything that was done right in Piranha kind of went askew in The Howling. And The Howling, it had a good amount of jokes, but it was also kind of trying to be a legitimate, serious, scary movie. And it I felt like it always clashed. Like it never quite worked. And I guess also just because I'd seen American Werewolf and I thought that was kind of a perfect werewolf movie. And Howling was, it was an earnest attempt in its own right, but I just felt like Piranha was a much better honed. And I think what you said earlier about it being Joe taking it from an editor's standpoint, I think Piranha was a better edited movie.
Yes.
The beats were more... percussive and it kept it going straight through to the end.
Yeah. Well, I think you're kind of hitting on that. It's like, what Joe Dante does so well is like kind of blending that humor and horror.
Right.
And, Gremlins 2, obviously, Piranha.
Burbs.
Even Burbs, yeah, where it's like it's mostly comedy, but also horror.
It's send up of horror, but it's still, it wouldn't have taken much for it to be a horror movie, totally. Which Ty West tried to do with House of the Devil, and it was absolutely horrible. Anyway.
You didn't like House of the Devil?
Oh, man. No, because I felt like, I was like, oh, he saw The Burbs and just decided to make it a serious movie. Like, that's what it felt.
A Mockbuster?
No. I mean, it just, yeah.
But maybe that's part of it. It's like what you're not responding to in The Howling is that, like, yeah, like the humor dial was turned too far down for you or something, and then it wasn't working as much.
Well, I think like Orca, it tried to kind of ride between a little bit of humor, but it was kind of drowned out by the more depressing aspects of it. I mean, that being said, I think Robert Picardo was my favorite part of that movie.
Yeah.
He was spot on. But
well, one thing I wanted to bring up is just like I love at sort of the very beginning of this movie, he does the table setting so well of like introducing the Heather Menzies character, which is she's the I don't know what she is, insurance investigator or something, where she's kind of like trying to find.
I think she's just a reporter. Is that?
No, I mean she's a skip tracer is what she says, but she's trying to find
she's trying to find the kids
hikers
right
from the beginning. But like you get so much from the banter from her boss, like in other movies they end up like blowing that type of banter, and like in here that they do it really well, and then. The way she's introduced to Bradford Dillman is great, and Bradford Dillman, by the way, is like I don't know what the poor man's Charlton Heston. Like his like voice and like even his look at the time, was kind of the same thing. He these New World Pictures can afford Bradford Dillman type of thing.
Well, yeah, he was he was in a lot of TV shows. Sure. I think right before that he was in Night Gallery a lot.
Well, and he's great in this movie too. But like. What I love, and I was really cracking up about, was like when they first meet one another, and he's cooking that fish for himself, and
just salting
drinking in the middle of the day, and and she's like, "Hey, did you find any of these kids?" And he's like, "No, get out." And she's like, "Well, I'm a skip tracer. I'm trying to find these people." And he's like, "Wait, what? Did my wife send you?" And I was like immediately going straight to like
right.
Stimpy, who's like Mr. Horse.
Do I know you?
I don't think so.
Did my wife send you?
Yeah. The isolated man in the mountain, terrified of his ex-wife coming to get him.
All right, so I made a mistake. One mistake. Can a man start over?
They did all that stuff, all that like work that like always makes like these like first acts like so painful sometimes, and especially in the lower budget setting. They did all that like so well, and it made it look effortless of like some good banter, funny one-liners and whatever.
I'm 2/3 bloodhound. I told you that when you hired me. I can manage it.
Of course you can.
It's money in the bank.
My money.
And then kind of get straight into it of like oh, let's just go release the fish right away to drain this place, and they go down to the bottom of the tank and like find. Obviously a human skeleton. He just kind of picks it up and he's like waving it around.
Well, it's a dog.
That was a dog skeleton.
Well, that's what he like guesses, right? But it was supposed to be those kids, right?
No, that was a dog skeleton. I think
a dog.
They fed, or that dog got in there, or they fed it that thing. But that was in the tank was a dog.
No. I think they had removed the skeletons and they put the dog skeleton in there as like a red herring or something. Because I mean, otherwise, what the fuck happened to their bodies? It's like they're completely
that's what I'm saying.
gone.
Like, I thought they were trying to make the assumption that this must be a dog.
No, but it doesn't. Its rib cage is too small. It doesn't look like a person, and there's no skulls or anything.
Small person.
It's I don't know. Yeah, that's
or maybe it's like okay, it's a bone. It's a femur bone. Ray, this is Walter.
It happens to be a human thigh bone, Ray. How do you know that? Biology 101. What do you think? This thing came off a chicken? It's just
I thought it was like almost the same sort of banter there. But anyway,
kind of, yeah. That's a good point, though. I hadn't thought of that connection. But
one other quick connection that was like to a movie we watched kind of recently was a couple things. Like one, when he like steals the police car and is like driving around that mud, jumping around.
Right.
Reminded me of the Dukes of Hazzard scene in Parallax View.
Exactly.
And then when he's about to like release the dam, the sort of blast, the horn blast or whatever, was a lot scarier of a sound in Parallax View. But it had that sort of like same like echo of that movie, like but luckily he got there in time to stop it, even though it actually didn't end up mattering because they could go around the other side. Anyway.
So the solution to this was to basically pollute the entire river system in order to kill the fish. And I mean, this obviously was a big statement on collateral damage and environmental effects of humans, basically. In this instance, the military. But even this, in order to save the day from some stupid fuck up, we fuck up the water even further. And then, we don't end with all the dead fish and everything's fine. It's this shitty ass scientist PR person giving an interview saying, "Oh, the danger's done now." And then we zoom into the waves as that sound from the Piranha is still there. So nothing is good. They obviously got out, and that's why we have Piranha 2.
Well, that's kind of a perfect transition to Alligator, which is about all this chemical runoff or whatever in the sewers causing the whatever baby pet alligators to grow into this horrible size. Although, ironically, it's just one that this happens to. Which
luckily they only flushed one because this would have happened a lot more.
Ramona the baby alligator, who 12 years later becomes the biggest thing I have ever seen on screen.
Right.
So this is starring...
Depending on which shot it is. But
sure,
yes.
Right. The very first shot of it is fucking horrifying because it's just like Robert Forster is looking the other way.
Oh, yeah.
And there's I think his flashlight goes back there for just a second.
Oh, right.
And you can see the thing's head like move to the side, and it's just a half a beat, but you're like, whoa, I was surprised. I thought that was a good moment.
This was a great monster movie, and I think that this movie would not have been a great monster movie had we not had a really cool protagonist in Robert Forster. His character was really fun. The stuff he said, he's like, "Oh yeah, we found a foot. That's all we found from this person, a foot." And he's like, "Must have been a small casket." His little responses to shit was really funny, and they kept fucking with him about his hair. They kept asking,
Oh my god. This movie's fucking bald shaming, like constant bald shaming is whatever. It's like this movie's canceled. All right,
exactly
it's anti-baldness propaganda. We might need to have a disclaimer at the beginning of this movie.
There you go,
so that Larry David doesn't get upset when we
follically challenged.
Hear it back.
Follically challenged.
But like they would just like relentlessly fucking with him.
I think every time that he was in a conversation with one of his buddies in the movie, they kept bringing up. They're like, "Who cuts your hair?" "Oh, I do it myself." He's like, you should get a stylist. The guy's like, "You should get a stylist."
Robert made a good point on the commentary that he's the one that brought that up. He brought it up to John Sayles saying that hey, I'm losing my hair and I just had these implants put in or whatever. Why don't I make a joke about it? Instead of just to bring a little humor and humanity to his part. So I think a lot of that was Robert, and he said that there's several different types of acting roles, and this is one that he thought he was fortunate in that they wanted a guy like him. They wanted somebody that was just basically kind of an average Joe that was just trying to understand a situation and deal with it as best he could, and Robert kind of embodies that.
An average Joe that had a history, and I thought that this one was really neat that they just kind of talked about through backstory that he had an issue with a previous partner who was killed on the job. He said he was stabbed, right? Or shot.
Oh, right.
I know that there was a confusing thing there with that slimy journalist that kept trying to that beat journalist.
Right.
He got his though, so that's all good. But they had a really cool backstory for him that that he had this issue with a previous partner that was killed, and then this. Well, it was a young cop. It wasn't really his partner in this, but someone that helped him go check out the sewers and to, investigate what's going on. That kid got it. So then, and he kept calling everybody kid. That's why I said that specifically. He's like, everyone younger than me is a kid.
Kelly,
yeah,
the
yes.
rookie officer Kelly.
Yeah, and that was
Kelly who came out of nowhere and Me Too'd
Yeah.
him, grabbed his ass as a jump scare.
You thought it was the alligator coming, in POV. Oh, and that brings up another point. To get past the low budget of a monster movie, just do a POV monster shot, and that's very successful.
Yeah.
That really works.
We learned that one from Jaws.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. The performance by Robert Forster when Kelly, was that his name? Officer Kelly, the one that was real terror on his face. For having a giant rubber monster down at the bottom of the sewer, he actually sold the fear of this, and I thought that this movie had those real, genuine, scary moments down in the sewer, especially. And then the perspective shots of this alligator that has been, I guess, for the last 12 years eating radioactive waste or runoff that has been just thrown into the sewer.
Experimental chemicals or whatever it was. It was something
from this. So that's what I wanted to ask. So really, we have another laboratory, right? We've got another gene splicing laboratory here, where this disgusting pet shop owner is delivering dogs to this. In turn, another disgusting future son-in-law of a rich chemical magnate or some sort of pharmaceutical magnate, somebody like that. That whole story alone, I mean, these obviously had some sense of, hey, there's some animal cruelty going on in the world, some environmental bullshit that we keep fucking with. Maybe this is a good message for you all that one of these days you're going to have a 50-foot alligator coming after you.
Right, and that aspect of it, the lab and the pet shop, connection, and how you were feeling bad for those animals and whatever. Especially when that guy tosses one of the dogs down, it hits it and doesn't go in.
Oh my God.
Kick it in and all shit. It's that and the shot of the alligator's eye, sort of imprinting it. Both of those aspects of it really reminded me of Orca.
Yeah.
In that sense, where it's you get that sort of sympathy for the animals, and then also the actual sort of the shot itself from Orca, the extreme close up of the eye.
Right.
Looking at what's going on.
The alligator meets an unfortunate end in this one. I mean, in Orca, the animal is victorious, right? Just kind of goes about its day. And then in this one, this poor alligator that literally had nothing wrong with it other than the fact that it was extremely hungry and that it was extremely big. And the fact that it became this alligator just because this young girl's dad was just being a dick. He was being like the dad from Creepshow, get the fuck out of here, dude.
Throw away your comics.
Yeah.
Right. Another interesting little connection I noticed. I mean, this is very, very minor, but to Orca was that both movies, kind of did a GoPro on the giant animal. In Alligator, they did that, and it was from more or less the POV of the animal, but it was we saw
over the shoulder. Over the ear, yeah,
and it was kind of mounted on there. And then they did. I forgot to mention this in Orca, but when the Orca was Ramming the iceberg at the end, and a couple other moments toward the end there, they had kind of this that sort of GoPro shot on the Orca's giant fin, which was really, I mean, it worked for me really well in Orca. Despite the fact that sort of the end of that, the rest of that scene wasn't firing on all cylinders.
A lot of Orca worked for me. A ton of Piranha worked for me. And Alligator, honestly, of all of these, this was the most surprising that I enjoyed of the films. I knew Orca was what it was. I knew it was gonna be a little bit more dramatic because I've seen parts of it already. But Alligator felt almost like a gritty they're in St. Louis, right, or Chicago, or.
No, it's never really weird. Defined.
Oh.
It's supposed to be kind of Chicago. So they head back from the very beginning. They and we see them go through Missouri or something.
Yeah.
But then I think it's supposed to be Chicago later on. But it's clearly like filmed in LA. It's like everywhere, it looks like LA.
Yeah,
Like...
Plus the whole mythology is that there's alligators in the sewers in New York. So it's like it's even more confusing.
Which is why I felt this way. Is when it started, I was like, oh, this feels like a nice, like a gritty New York movie. Almost like how Highlander felt. Highlander felt like it was like kind of on the low budget. But still had a lot of cool stuff happening, as well as like a really cool lead character. And I thought that this one really depended on him being a cool lead character. But I felt like there was something like very tangible or full loaded with texture in this one, that this guy was really on an investigation searching for this thing. And even when they showed this giant alligator, which I was like, this is going to be cheesy as fuck, they did a pretty good job. I mean, the animatronic thing was great. And then the scale that they made it seem like it looked like, when they would just basically put like a smaller park bench next to it and have it like bump into it and like those sorts of things. That sold, in my opinion. And they didn't need to show it too much, but they showed it enough that it still delivered, and you still got a lot of monster out of it. And that thing was fucking people up.
Or like when he's like just destroying that limo at the end.
Awesome.
And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. But again, I wanted to bring up the kids in the pool though. That was quite a horrific scene, and just the way that those kids basically like drop the one kid into the mouth of the alligator. You just see that thing underwater. It like opens up, and then there's the grease pit that this grease stain that this kid now is just floating on top of the water. I was like, Jesus Christ. It was just gone.
Yeah.
Mom?
And I wonder if like that's the John Sayles connection, that he has a disregard for that rule of like no killing of animals or kids. He does both in both these movies.
Louis Teague said in the commentary that was something that he and his brother always joked about with each other. Like, oh, there's an alligator in the pool, don't go in there. So that this was just kind of like a really sick, what if reality joke.
Yeah, exactly.
So Louis Teague obviously has a penchant for animal horror, with Cat's Eye and Cujo on his belt as well.
Well, and that's the funny thing, because Robert Forster said he ran into Stephen King, and King told him that Alligator was one of his favorite scary movies, and that's what basically got Louis Teague the job of directing Cujo and then Cat's Eye.
No way.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, because it was one of King's favorites.
Yeah, this one was surprisingly good. This is one of those when I was growing up in the movie, or growing up and going to the video store and seeing all of the box art, which I really miss. I know you still go to video store, Jeremy, but I have not been to one in several years. But this was one of those that I always saw, and actually the one that I remember mostly was Alligator 2's box art and cover art, and I remember they would be close to each other, but that was the one that stuck with me, and I've never seen either of those movies. But again, now I'm kind of down the hole and rabbit hole of giant radioactive animals.
So wait, did you see Alligator 2?
Mm-mm.
No, he just saying he saw the box art.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I actually saw Alligator 2 before I saw the first one. And it's got Joseph Bologna in it, and it's extraordinarily low budget. It's one of those like movies you'd see on the Sci-Fi Channel's Moonlight Matinee, which is mostly full moon. But Alligator 2 was a favorite there, and it was a really dirty, gross, low budget movie, which I'm oddly nostalgic for. But I mean, the original Alligator is a far superior movie.
I mean, and it did really well at the box office. I mean, for a 1.7 budget, it made 6.5. That's pretty damn good for obviously what they didn't spend a whole lot of money on.
Right.
So at this time, Robert Forster, was he pretty well known as an actor? I know he was in stuff previously.
He'd done a bunch of stuff. I think he said he and Lewis worked on Avalanche for New World, and he had been in Louis Teague's The Lady in Red as like a gimme part that Lewis wanted to put him in a movie, and he did that basically for nothing, which is why he was uncredited in Lady in Red. But he liked working with him so much that he offered him the lead role in Alligator, which I think was quite a feather in Robert's hat, so
he's quite an actor. He's really great.
Well, and he was the star of Medium Cool, which
right.
Which I think that was kind of his big break.
And funny enough though, like at the beginning of the movie when it was still when the Marissa character was a child and her alligator was thrown away, one of the events that oriented the audience that this was back in time was that they were talking about the 1968 Democratic Convention, which is what Medium Cool is about.
Oh, okay.
Which is an interesting little connection.
Very interesting.
And then another slight connection is that the Robert Forster's hairline made another sort of like joke one-off line in Jackie Brown.
I don't remember that part in Jackie Brown.
Yeah, well, it's like he and Jackie are talking about Max Cherry and Jackie are talking about getting older, and one of the things he brought up was like, I was losing my hair back there for a while, and then I did something about it, and I feel pretty good.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Right.
Yeah. Those were real conversations in that.
Yeah. Yeah, they weren't written down at all.
Just to be clear, it wasn't anything radioactive that was in Alligator. I just want to make sure that we're clear on this. The animals that are in this had been used as test subjects for an experimental growth formula intended to increase agricultural livestock meat production. So it's basically all just GMOs, right? Like this is just pumping up hormones
into injecting it into like stray dogs. So you can eat dog meat.
Those are done. Right. You can take those and throw them wherever you throw them. Apparently in the sewer.
Yeah.
God. So it makes me think, like, were these guys inadvertently feeding Ramona down in the sewer with dead dogs and old experimental dogs?
I think that was the implication.
Yeah, right. They were just kind of keeping this thing at least satiated enough so that once it was now 2 tons and like 35 feet long and ready to take on the world here 12 years later, it was just hungry enough. To eat everybody that it sees.
And I like the actor that they cast in the pet shop owner part. He had a decent little part in Carrie. He was one of the teachers that
he's been in a bunch of stuff.
He's got such a jovial face, and he always plays kind of
like little dark
assholes
in him. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is this Sidney Lassick? Because he was in Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
I love the speaking of sort of cameos, I love the Henry Silva cameo in this.
Right. He's definitely the Quint of
yeah.
kind of racist asshole who is trying to recruit some neighborhood youths to.
I was really hoping that Robert Forster would start kicking his ass. We're like, what was he doing with his hands? What was Raymond doing with his hands?
I'm sure they all wanted to do it, but
yeah,
alas.
Maybe that happens in Alligator too.
Right.
So yeah, let's talk about that. When are we going to talk about the sequels to all of these films? And was there ever an Orca 2? And if there wasn't, why the fuck not? I need to know where the hell this Orca is now with the little nick out of his fin there.
There is in fact an Orca 2, and it's called Free Willy. Okay.
Which is what that opening scene was kind of like building up toward. It was like
exactly
all the Orca porn in the beginning.
It is weird, yeah.
And that dumb kid let him out at the end. Let him jump over his head. Now you let him out.
I guess.
Yeah,
you let him out.
Yeah, just like Kevin McCarthy runs and
no. Oh, kill us all! Oh my God!
Yeah. Don't hit that hard.
Well, I mean, because it does oddly kind of lead into Jaws 3 in some ways. Yeah. Mostly just the kind of silliness, but also SeaWorld. Because there is an orca in SeaWorld, and it's like it kind of saves the day. Or no, well, it doesn't. No, actually, the dolphins save the day. What am I talking about? But there are orcas in
I mean, I'm sure the story of Jaws 3 is rich and really compelling. You should definitely watch that one at some point.
I actually really like Jaws 3 a lot. It's goofy as hell, but it's fun. There was another interesting little nod to Jaws in Alligator when Robert Forster is flipping through a book on alligators. I thought that was a nice little
Oh, right. Yeah, that's kind of what Roy Scheider does when he's starting to scare himself.
Well, they also do that in Orca. Nolan, where Richard Harris gets the book from the killer whale expert. She gives him a book, and he's reading through it or thumbing through it, like basically throughout the whole movie. And at one point he like hands it over to somebody. He's like, "Read about it. It's right here."
Right.
Right. Well, what's interesting, like, just to kind of talk about the mockbuster part of it. I mean, Orca was the closest one to sort of trading on the Jaws wake. Piranha came out so late that it was basically trying to get you hyped up for Jaws 2.
Right.
And, Alligator came out even later, right? Like that was...
Alligator wasn't until 1980, but I mean, I think they started writing the script earlier than that. But, I mean, I think Piranha was intended to be a very immediate thing that got pushed down and down and down and further because of whatever budgeting and scheduling and all that kind of stuff.
Right, and then they kind of ended up, timing the release closer to Jaws 2, and it was something that were like, apparently, Universal was getting upset that this one was so similar, and it was coming out around their movie that was a sequel to the movie, and the thing that sort of allowed Piranha to play in theaters in 1978 when it was intended was that Spielberg saw it and he liked it. And, then Joe Dante, has his career aligned with Spielberg there for a while.
For several years,
Twilight Zone,
Gremlins.
Gremlins, obviously, yeah.
The little one you might be known for, yeah.
Yeah.
So this was August 3rd, 1978. When did Jaws 2 come out?
It was June 1978.
June. Oh, okay, June 16th, 1978. Okay, interesting.
So this is like 3 weeks later.
Right. It is odd. I mean, I'm sure Universal probably made them do that, to not fuck with their massive moneymaker. But
but that actually was a thing that they were trying to at least put roadblocks in the way of Piranha's release. Universal was trying to do that so that they could have their summer of like only one monster in the water type of thing. But apparently Spielberg talked him out of it or whatever. It's like, yeah, let it go. It's like that's one movie. This is our movie. And good thing for Joe Dante that Spielberg liked his movie.
But
both for that release and then I guess later collaborations, right?
Yeah, definitely worked out big time.
All right, so that's about that for that. We watched and talked about 3 films that are mockbusters of Jaws: Orca from 1977, Piranha from 1978, and Alligator from 1980. Next week, we are going to be watching and talking about Burn After Reading, In the Loop, and The Informant. Now, why are we putting these films together, Jeremy?
Yeah, we've got kind of an interesting time period here of the end of the 2000s. And in that time, there was this definite zeitgeist. These movies kind of came out in rapid succession. And all 3 of them, kind of deal with these characters who the audience is removed from, but all these characters, even though they're always doing the wrong thing, are the hero of their own story. And each of these explore them in a different way, but similarly because they're all, done in a really comedic way. And, that's, I guess, to me, kind of what you need to tell this kind of like ironically removed story. But it'll be fun. We'll go through and see how these all connect.
Great, and thank you very much for joining us again, Michael Floyd. This was a lot of fun.
My pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me.
We will be back next week. Make sure you follow the Grindhouse Institute on all the social platforms as well as all the podcast platforms, especially on iTunes. Please give us a rating. Once we get better ratings or more ratings, I think, is really how it works out. Once we get more of those, we get surfaced and people can listen to us and enjoy these wonderful voices that you hear every week. Aw, well, one amazing voice. I won't say which one of us. Yeah. No, thank you very much for listening. Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's Michael. That's why we keep having him back on.
Yeah.
For years.
So we will see you guys next week, and thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Ciao.
They called it Operation Razor Teeth.
What was it all for?
To destroy the river systems of the North Vietnamese.
Our tax dollars at work, huh?
Well, that's science in the service of the defense effort.
You put them in the river where they could kill people.
I never killed anybody. If you want to talk about killing, you talk to your politicians, the military people. No, I'm a scientist.